happening tonight in Vancouver.
We're following the rules, so we don't want people to get upset at us.
When you walk up to a restaurant, indoor concert, sporting event, bar, or even a movie theater on September 13th, you will need to show proof of vaccination if you want to get inside. The move has spurred some lower mainland businesses to worry about enforcement, while others say they won't be checking for vaccinations at all.
This is one place where Mr. Noor Mohammed bought and sold the property within 3 months.
Just after Liberal leader Justin Trudeau pledged to crack down on home flipping, the Liberal candidate for Vancouver Granville is under fire for selling multiple properties in a short time span.
There's nothing that beats the beauty of gathering in a physical space with other folks and feeling that everybody around you accepts you for who you are.
The return of an evening in Damascus, how the event is supporting Rainbow Refugees and the community.
This is City News Everywhere.
Good evening. One person has been killed after a building collapse at a construction site in North Vancouver. RCMP says a structural collapse was reported this morning about 9:45 at the former Empire Theatres building in Lower Lonsdale. The former theatre is currently undergoing extensive renovations. North Van Fire Rescue Service determined the person had suffered catastrophic injuries, but it is currently not safe for personnel to recover the victim's body. Now, one other person was injured and taken to hospital, and they are expected to survive. An investigation is currently underway to determine the cause of the collapse. Well, Vancouver police have released video of an unprovoked attack on a man in Yaletown, hoping to confirm the identity of the suspects. Now, a warning, the violence in the following video is quite graphic, and it could be disturbing to some viewers. The video shows the victim approaching three men on Hamilton Street the night of July 26th. Now, the attacker, seen in a red jersey, hits the man and continues to chase him down the street before kicking him several times. Another man intervenes and pushes the attacker away. The victim is someone police regularly interact with, and they say he's a pleasant man. Police are reluctantly releasing the video and say they owe it to the victim, who's already a vulnerable and marginalized man, to do everything they can to solve this crime.
This man was fortunately not seriously hurt, but I can't speak for him, and I can't speak for the emotional or psychological trauma that must go with being treated like this by a stranger.
The VPD says that they have seen a recent increase in seemingly random, unprovoked attacks committed by strangers in the city.
We will never discriminate against age, religion, sexual orientation, vaccination status. Some BC businesses are taking a stand against the newly announced BC vaccine card. Others support the decision, but worry businesses will be responsible for enforcement.
We really want to get to the point where society's past the pandemic and we can do business as usual, and this seems like it's the fastest path there. But obviously, we're a little nervous about implementing it and kind of the details and how it gets implemented.
Starting September 13th, the province has announced that proof of vaccination will be required in order to access non-essential businesses. One dose will be required to enter places like indoor concerts, sporting events, movies, restaurants, and bars. And then by October 24th, only fully immunized people with 2 doses will be allowed in. The move has spurred some lower mainland businesses to worry about enforcement.
And that's definitely a challenge. I think in the first wave of the pandemic, when we had to restrict group sizes and closing early and that sort of thing, there were some challenging times for, a young host in front of a customer that gets a little aggressive at the door. Those were, for the most part, somewhat isolated. I think if we get enough government support where it's very black and white and nobody thinks it's a choice and everybody understands it's just how it is, I think we can alleviate most of those challenges.
We don't want to beat the police. We want to follow the rules. I think that we have been affected with COVID. Like, I lost my mother-in-law with COVID, so COVID, I take it very serious. But I think that the uncertainty of the order is what is confusing.
Videos like this have been circulating online in support of showing proof of vaccination. But there have also been dozens of BC businesses speaking out on social media against the requirement and vowing not to comply with the order. The Ministry of Health tells City News if individuals or businesses do not comply, there are enforcement measures such as closure that can be considered.
What we will likely see is businesses being fined for not engaging in doing the checks and for not complying with the rules. Essentially, the order applies to the businesses, and if the businesses violate the order by allowing people in who aren't fully vaccinated or who aren't complying with the rules, then the business could end up being fined.
There are also questions around the legality of it, given BC has not included any exemptions for people who are unable to get vaccinated for health, religious, or other reasons. The only individuals who are exempt are children under the age of 12.
Because it's not limiting your access to any essential services, because it's not limiting your access to anything that you would need to survive day to day, it doesn't really majorly impact your rights. It only impacts your ability to participate in some privileged activities.
The province says the order requiring proof of vaccination will be in place until at least January. In New Westminster, Ashley Burr, City News.
BC is reporting 698 new cases of COVID-19 and 1 new death today. Now, of the active cases, 139 people are in hospital, with 75 in intensive care. Most cases are among the unvaccinated. Between August 10th and 23rd, they accounted for 83% of infections and 85% of hospitalizations. BC has now surpassed 75% of people aged 12 and up fully vaccinated. And the province has reported a nearly 200% jump in the number of vaccine appointments booked since last week. BC's police watchdog has cleared Vancouver officers involved in a fatal shooting in the city's downtown east side earlier this year. A report from the Independent Investigations Office says the officers' use of force in the January 5th shooting was, quote, justified, necessary, and proportionate because they had no choice, end quote. It says the officers feared the man who was carrying a sword. The IIO report says the officers were not carrying a stun gun and fired a total of 5 shots from about 3 meters away. It says the man was taken to hospital where he was pronounced dead. Heads up, drivers, seismic upgrades are about to begin on one of Vancouver's busiest bridges. Preliminary work along the Cambie Street Bridge started today with structural repairs and lighting upgrades. Work on the main bridge deck will follow next month and will have impacts on driving, cycling, and pedestrian traffic. The early stages will still allow 2 lanes of traffic in each direction. As work progresses, lane closures may come into effect. Work will continue through December. Now, similar seismic upgrades are being done on the Granville Bridge.
Will crack down on predatory speculators competing with families trying to buy their first home.
Federal party leaders talk housing, mental health, and cell phone bills as they look for your vote.
We will build a mental health care system that meets the needs of all Canadians.
Whether he did it on purpose or by accident, he's made profits from flipping.
On Tuesday, Liberal leader Justin Trudeau pledged to crack down on home flipping, promising, if re-elected, to impose heavy taxes on anyone selling a home within 12 months. But now the Liberal candidate for Vancouver Granville, Talib Noor Mohammed, is under fire for selling 3 of his properties within that short time frame.
So this is 1616 West 13th Avenue, and this is one place where Mr. Noor Mohammed bought and sold the property within 3 months.
Local housing advocate Rahana Rizal questions the Liberal Party's plans to improve housing affordability when they have candidates like Talib Noor Mohammed doing exactly what the party wants to control.
Mr. Noor Mohammed is running to be an MP, so he's effectively going to be voting for legislation that's going to make what he's doing less profitable. Is it in Mr. Noor Mohammed's best interests to pass legislation that makes flipping less profitable?
This property is in Vancouver's Fairview neighborhood. Mr. Noor Mohammed says he was planning to live here, but the pandemic made renovations challenging and he was unable to rent the unit. The Liberal candidate has sold 4 properties since 2017, bringing in nearly $600,000. But he insists he's not a speculator, saying his properties in question were meant to be renovated into livable space or designated for family members. News 1130's Martin McMahon spoke with him on Wednesday Wednesday.
You know, when you look at the bought and sold lines on a property, that does not reflect the work, the time, the effort that has gone into many of these properties. I fully support the tax on properties that are not held for at least 12 months. I support the plan the government's put forward. And as I said, I know that there may be property transactions that I've done in the past that would be penalized under this plan.
In other words, Mr. Nur Mohammed admits his property sales were flips.
And so it puts him on the wrong side of what is a key issue for voters in that particular riding. This could hurt the Liberals. It could reduce the support for the Liberal Party in that riding.
We should also point out that the Conservative candidate, Kylene Chi, she organized a crowdfunding campaign to get the speculation tax removed. You're stuck between a rock and a hard place if you were planning to vote for one of the two main parties.
In Vancouver, Kier Junos, City News.
Will crack down on predatory speculators competing with families trying to buy their first home.
Justin Trudeau reaffirms his party's commitment to putting a tax on people looking to buy a home, then sell it for a quick profit. The Liberal leader has made big promises on how he intends to cool off the housing market. And now he says he's going to go after big banks and insurance companies to pay for it.
We will raise the corporate income tax rate for Canada's largest and most profitable banks and insurance companies by 3 percentage points on all earnings over $1 billion.
However, a new report from our sister station, News 1130, found that a Vancouver Liberal candidate had bought and sold 4 homes in the last 4 years at a profit of $600,000. 3 of those would qualify to be taxed under Trudeau's proposed anti-speculation tax.
Whether you're a young professional, a family just starting out, or a senior looking to downsize, it's important to be able to find a place that's safe and affordable to call home.
Talib Nur Mohammed says all of the homes were ones he or family members intended to live in, but the pandemic made that impossible.
Our Canada Mental Health Action Plan will provide real help to those in need and their families.
The Conservative leader, meanwhile, is promising big investments in mental health, tax incentives for corporations that prioritize mental health, a 24-hour 3-digit suicide prevention line, and $60 billion in extra health funding. Aaron O'Toole says it's personal. While serving in the Air Force, O'Toole's squadron responded to the 1998 Swiss Air crash, which had no survivors.
I saw how the exposure to trauma impacted some of my colleagues. It was the first time I heard the term operational stress injury, and I saw how the military was trying to treat mental health like physical health.
The same way we put emphasis on connecting people through roads and bridges and that physical infrastructure needed to connect people, now one of the most essential ways for people to connect to their work, to their education, to services is through the internet.
In Windsor, Ontario, Jagmeet Singh says the NDP wants to make good on a Liberal promise from 2019 to slash cell phone bills. At that time, Liberals promised to cut cellular bills in half, but Canadian cell phone bills are still among the highest in the G7.
We have examples of other countries that have done this. The United States actually put in a price cap. Australia also put in a price cap. So we've got precedent here. It's been done before. Other countries have put in price caps when it comes to the cost of cellular services, when it comes to the cost of internet.
In Ottawa, Xiaoli Li, City News.
There's nothing that beats the beauty of gathering in a physical space with other folks and feeling that everybody around you accepts you for who you are.
It's the in-person return of a safe place where seemingly dueling identities don't clash. They weave together intricately for a night that celebrates both being gay and Syrian.
And I tuck usually the t-shirts in.
Danny Ramadan is getting ready for RBC Presents An Evening in Damascus, a fundraiser for the Rainbow Refugee initiative that's also a haven for those who've been missing spaces to celebrate themselves.
Our bars are closing, our clubs are closing, we are losing our spaces, and that's sad because part of that allows us to keep our identities. So we need to keep those identities through those gatherings that we create.
Long before the annual event, Ramadan was running an underground gay community center out of his Damascus apartment in 2010. The community met in secret.
We had a sharing circle where you sit down and talk about your days, about your experiences, about your family. We had movie nights where I downloaded illegally some queer-focused movies and I would screen them on a projector on the wall.
The last big event was a Halloween party, not long after Ramadan was arrested for hosting the gatherings. He spent weeks in jail and fled as a refugee. But he says the evening in Damascus is an extension of those get-togethers. It's both a haven and a fundraiser to sponsor refugees in countries where being queer is illegal. The pandemic forced it to switch to a virtual gathering last year, but community members say there's excitement and a need to return in person.
It's really cool to see this resurgence within our community and within the event spaces. Events are coming back, and the few that I've been able to do in Vancouver so far has been so cool. It almost feels like kind of the Roaring 20s.
It's really important, and especially for those who didn't have this experience, for those who doesn't have voice to tell who they are.
So the internet was the way that I communicated with other queer folks. I got to know other folks who identify within the LGBTQ community in Damascus. But that wasn't enough. It's never enough, really.
City News Vancouver and News 1130 are sponsoring the event on October 1st at Terminal City Club. Tickets are on sale at eveningindamascus.com. In Vancouver, Crystal Adaris, City News.
Well, after a summer without one of the Lower Mainland's most anticipated events, the PNE is back. Yes, all of your food favorites are available, including some standouts like towers of mini donuts and rainbow blue cheese sandwiches. Okay, opening last Saturday, the fair looks a little different this year. Capacity is restricted and masks are required in all indoor areas and recommended in the outdoor areas. The evening concert series is not happening this year, but there's still lots to see. Most events happening outdoors, and even with the changes, organizers are happy to be back.
There's been a lot of people that have worked so hard to make this year possible, and we are so grateful to be able to bring back so many of our youth workers, new Canadians, and longtime employees, as well as our concessionaire family, to provide much needed employment as well as revenue for those families.
Tickets must be purchased in advance online, and the fair runs daily through September 6th. Vancouver's news is always available on the radio with News 1130 or online anytime at citynews1130.com. Your next edition of City News is tonight at 11. Thanks for watching and have a great night.